A criminal trial can feature a flawless prosecution, ironclad evidence, and perfect legal arguments, only to be thrown out completely mid-trial. These abrupt dismissals often stem from fatal geographic errors, occurring even when the evidence of the crime itself is overwhelming. Prosecutions begin with a primary charging document, the criminal information. It dictates both the penalty involved and the exact place the crime was committed. In criminal law, judicial authority is strictly tied to physical geography. Civil procedure allows parties to waive venue requirements if a different court is more convenient. Criminal procedure allows for no such flexibility. Prosecuting an offense in the wrong municipality strips the trial judge of all legal authority to hear the case. The Supreme Court mapped the exact parameters of this authority in the landmark case Treñas v. PEOPLE. A trial court's power relies on three interlocking legal pillars. All three must be present simultaneously. First is jurisdiction over the subject matter. This is assigned strictly by statute, dictating which courts hear which types of crimes. Second is jurisdiction over the person of the accused. The court acquires this only when law enforcement executes a valid arrest or the defendant voluntarily surrenders. Third, and most volatile, is jurisdiction over the territory, the fixed geographic boundaries assigned to that specific court. Subject matter is straightforward to verify. For example, if the maximum penalty for a crime exceeds 6 years, the law places it in a regional trial court rather than a first-level municipal trial court. But even if a judge holds the correct statutory authority over the crime type and the suspect is secured in custody, a failure in that third territorial pillar causes the entire jurisdictional framework to collapse. This strict territorial requirement centers on a concept called locus criminis, the exact geographic place of the crime. Applying this concept becomes highly technical in dense urban environments, where municipal borders blur and crimes can cross city lines. This textbook excerpt explains the jurisprudential reasoning. It notes that laying the venue in the locus criminis is grounded on the necessity and justice of having an accused on trial in the municipality where witnesses and defense facilities are actually available. Because this rule exists to protect the accused, a defendant cannot stipulate or agree to move the trial to a different city just to save travel time. The boundary rule is absolute. If the elements of the offense happened even slightly outside the trial court's defined geographic radius, the judge cannot issue a valid ruling. Locus criminis serves as the physical anchor, granting a judge the legal right to decide a case. This strict geographic requirement creates a major logistical problem when a crime physically moves across multiple city borders. The law addresses this through the concept of continuing or transitory crimes. Offenses like estafa or violations of Batas Pembansa 22, the anti-bouncing check law, are prime examples. We can trace how jurisdiction attaches by looking at the timeline of a BP 22 violation, applying the frameworks seen in cases like Union Bank and Yalong. The first element occurs when the check is initially drawn and issued in City A. The second element happens when the physical check is delivered to the payee in City B. The final element triggers when that check is presented to the bank and dishonored in City C. The jurisdictional rule for these transitory crimes dictates that jurisdiction validly attaches to any trial court where at least one essential ingredient of the crime occurred. In an interconnected metropolis, commercial transactions are constantly crossing these municipal lines. To prevent multiple courts from hearing the same case, an exclusivity principle applies. Once the first valid court takes cognizance of the transitory crime, it automatically excludes all other potential courts. In transitory offenses, crossing municipal borders creates multiple legal avenues for the prosecution to secure a valid venue. The most dangerous phase of criminal litigation lies in the gap between filing the case and actually presenting evidence. Initially, a court assumes jurisdiction purely based on the written allegations drafted in the complaint or information. But during the trial phase, the prosecution bears the absolute burden of proving that alleged location with hard evidence. As the trial progresses toward the presentation of evidence, the prosecution's geographical claims are tested under oath. If witness testimony or documentation reveals the crime actually happened in a different municipality than what was originally alleged, the prosecution hits a dead end. The procedural mandate is uncompromising. As this text outlines, If in the course of the trial, the evidence shows the offense was committed elsewhere, the court should dismiss the action for want of jurisdiction. This is the core lesson of the Treñas doctrine. Alleging jurisdiction merely starts the trial. Proving the locus criminis with evidence is the only way to survive it. A critical boundary question remains. What happens when the locus criminis is physically too dangerous for a fair trial to proceed? While the parties themselves can never waive criminal venue, there is one supreme constitutional exception to the rule. The Supreme Court of the Philippines is the only judicial authority capable of overriding these standard territorial boundaries. This authority comes directly from Article 8, Section 5, Paragraph 4 of the Constitution. It explicitly grants the Supreme Court the inherent power to order a change of venue or place of trial to avoid a miscarriage of justice. This power is reserved for extreme situations involving hostile sentiment or severe danger, such as the high-profile transfer of the Maguindano massacre trials to a secure court in Quezon City. Only the Supreme Court can break the iron rule of locus criminis, and it does so exclusively to protect the fundamental integrity of the justice system. Statutory authority over a penalty means nothing without geographic validity. The Treñas doctrine proves that the three requisites of jurisdiction are unyielding. Subject matter, person, and territory must lock together to form a valid trial. Legal practitioners cannot treat criminal venue with the leniency allowed in civil procedure. A geographic error cannot be fixed by agreement. In criminal procedure, a court without geographic truth is a court without power.